was in New York during Hurricane Sandy, and this little white dog called Maui was staying with me. Half the city was dark because of a power cut, and I was living on the dark side. Now, Maui was terrified of the dark, so I had to carry him up the stairs, actually down the stairs first, for his walk, and then bring him back up. I was also hauling gallons of bottles of water up to the 7th floor every day. And through all of this, I had to hold a torch between my teeth. The stores nearby were out of flashlights, batteries, and bread. For a shower, I walked 40 blocks to a branch of my gym. But these were not the major preoccupations of my day. It was just as critical for me to be the first person in at a cafe nearby with extension cords and chargers to juice my multiple devices. I started to prospect under the benches of bakeries and the entrances of pastry shops for plug points. I wasn't the only one. Even in the rain, people stood between Madison and Fifth Avenue under their umbrellas, charging their cell phones from outlets on the street. Nature had just reminded us that it was stronger than all our technology, and yet here we were, obsessed about being wired. I think there's nothing like a crisis to tell you what's really important and what's not. And Sandy made me realize that our devices and their connectivity matter to us right up there with food and shelter. The South, as we once knew it, no longer exists, and I think that an abstract digital universe has become a part of our identity. And I want to talk to you about what I think that means. I'm a novelist, and I'm interested in the South because the South and fiction have a lot in common. They're both stories, interpretations. You and I can experience things without a story. We might run up the stairs too quickly, and we might get breathless. But the larger sense that we have of our lives, the slightly more abstract one, is indirect. Our story of our life is based on direct experience, but it's embellished. A novel needs scene after scene to build, and the story of our life needs an arc as well. It needs months and years. Discrete moments from our lives are its chapters, but the story is not about these chapters. It's the whole book. It's not only about the heartbreak and the happiness, the victories and the disappointments, but it's because of these, and sometimes more importantly, in spite of these, we find our place in the world, and we change it, and we change ourselves. Our story, therefore, needs two dimensions of time, a long arc of time that is our lifespan, and the time frame of direct experience, that is the moment. Now, the self that experiences directly can only exist in the moment, but the one that narrates needs several moments, a whole sequence of them. And that's why our full sense of self needs both immersive experience and the flow of time. Now the flow of time is embedded in everything, in the erosion of a grain of sand, in the budding of a little bud into a rose. Without it, we would have no music. Our own emotions and state of mind often encode time. Regret or nostalgia about the past, hope or dread about the future. I think that technology has altered that flow of time. The overall time that we have for our narrative, our lifespan, has been increasing, but the smallest measure, the moment, has shrunk. It has shrunk because our instruments enable us, in part, to measure smaller and smaller units of time. And this, in turn, has given us a more granular understanding of the material world. And this granular understanding has generated reams of data that our brains can no longer comprehend, and for which we need more and more complicated computers. All of this to say that the gap between what we can perceive and what we can measure is only going to widen. Science can do things with and in a picosecond, but you and I are never going to have the inner experience of a millionth of a second. You and I answer only to nature's rhythm and flow, to the sun, the moon, and the seasons. And this is why we need that long arc of time with the past, the present, and the future to see things for what they are, to separate signal from noise and the self from sensations. We need time's arrow to understand cause and effect, not just in the material world, but in our own intentions and our motivations. What happens when that arrow goes awry? What happens when time warps? So many of us today have the sensation that time's arrow is pointing everywhere and nowhere at once. This is because time doesn't flow flow in the digital world in the same way that it does in the natural one. We all know that the internet has shrunk space as well as time. Far away over there is now here. News from India is a stream on my smartphone app, whether I'm in New York or New Delhi. And that's not all. Your last job, your dinner reservations from last year, your former friends lie on a flat plane with today's friends because the internet also archives and it warps the past. With no distinction left between the past, the present, and the future, and the here or there, we're left with this moment everywhere. This moment that I'll call the digital now. Just how can we prioritize in the landscape of the digital now? This digital now is not the present because it's always a few seconds ahead with Twitter streams that are already trending and news from other time zones.